Thank you for joining us today. This program is called, typically when I teach it in my county, it's called Meals in Minutes. And I like to throw in the Instapot versus the pressure cooker because a lot of people think that the Instapot is the pressure cooker, but Instant Pot is just a brand name. And so for what it has somehow attached itself. And so I like to sneak that in so that people have a general idea of what this class is about when they sign up for it. My name is Katelyn Andersen, and I'm an Extension Agent in Ravalli County. So a special thank you to Kansas State University Extension, as well as Utah State University Extension and HIP Pressure Cooking. All three of these agencies have helped provide some resources to make this program possible. So I will say that any reference to a commercial product or trade name does not imply discrimination or endorsement by Montana State University Extension. That, like I said earlier, somehow Instant Pot has somehow attached its brand name to the overall generic name for an electric pressure cooker. It's similar to Kleenex is, people refer to a Kleenex like you would a facial tissue. So Instant Pot somehow has attached itself to electric pressure cooker. So if this is your first class with MSU Extension and you're new to it, MSU Extension is a statewide educational outreach network that provides unbiased research-based university resources. I like to say that we are here to help you help yourself. And so every noon hour in April, Extension faculty member came together to offer a program over the noon hour to just help pass the time during this quarantine. And so this and think that this is just another cooking class, but this is an opportunity for families to save money, help families enjoy more nutritious meals at home to increase time spent together, which I think we've all spent a little bit more time than what we usually do with our families during this time. It's a way to increase your cooking skills, knowledge, and use of menu planning, and understand food safety to reduce those foodborne illnesses. And ultimately, we hope to reduce the risk of chronic diseases and other ailments by cooking more nutritious meals at home rather than going through that takeout. So here's the picture of myself that I like to show during the classes. This is a couple of years ago, and my husband and I were remodeling our house. It was in the dead of winter, and I had signed up to teach a class through local adult ed program on the electric pressure cooker. I had that box arrive in my house, and I had tried a couple of recipes, and so far, all of them at this point, I felt as though I was really struggling to find a use for this device. It seems like it took a little bit extra energy for me to use it. Things took a little bit longer to cook. I had a general sense of how I like to cook my recipes, and it just seemed to take longer. I was trying to adapt all of them to the electric pressure cooker. But this night, the night that my house was completely destroyed, we were painting all day. My husband was totally fine eating that bowl of cereal. Meanwhile, I wanted something that was more nutritious. And so my house was torn apart, and here I was able to cook a delicious meal. And it was something that I would have cooked on any other night had my house not been totally torn apart. And this was the night that I fell in love with the pressure cooker. And I realized that it did have a place in my household. And I could really see college students, people with studio apartments, those with just limited kitchen space, or the desire to really not have a bunch of pots and pans in their house. This was a device that could replace a lot of different things. So you may be wondering, what exactly is a pressure cooker? So it uses the same science and techniques as canning low acid foods. And this is one of the newest forms of food preservation when you think about canning. It wasn't used until about 150 years ago, really traditionally in our households. So a lot of extension agents offer canning classes. And I think this year with the desire to want to be a little bit more self-reliant, a canning class may be offered through your local extension office. So feel free to reach out to them. So it uses that same pressure cooker fundamentals by boiling liquids and trapping steam within a pot, and it has a lid on it that locks in place. It increases pressure in the cooking pot, and you have a higher boiling point because of that locked steam inside. And so you're able to cook at a higher temperature. And here's a picture of kind of how it operates. So there's liquids down at the bottom with foods, and it creates steam, and it has that lid locked in place. So I will say that although the science is similar, it is not safe for you to can food in a pressure cooker, even if the manufacturer says so. So the USDA does not have recommended processing for canning in a small pressure cooker. Now, there are some university extensions that are doing research to see if it's possible, but there's a story that I'll share later that it just isn't safe to make it happen. So if the number one thing that you should take away from today's class is it is not safe to can in a pressure cooker. Our National Center for Food Preservation, this food scientist has shared that she has reached out to companies that have claimed that you can in a pressure cooker, and they either provide her with science that doesn't measure up to what she knows, or they don't respond to her at all. So right now, what I can tell you is it is not safe to can in an electric pressure cooker. So the difference between a stovetop and an electric pressure cooker, one of my coworkers shares that she remembers when the stovetop pressure cooker was really popular. And she shared with me that the stovetop, that pressure cooker, you're able to cook at a slightly higher temperature and you have a lot more control over it. And especially like in sensitive foods like a broccoli soup, you're able to use your stove it up and dial it down. But with that control, it does take a little bit of time to get used to having that correct pressure, and it takes a little bit of practice. But with the electric pressure cooker, there's no monitoring required. You cook it cooks at a slightly lower pressure than on the stove. It uses a little bit less moisture, and there's some different options with your electric pressure cooker. Specifically, there's some options with the liner pots. You can get a nonstick or you can get an aluminum, or I'm sorry, a stainless steel. So let's check it out. I'm going to take you out of this PowerPoint. And I'm going to let you look at the video. Oops. Oh, I'm having some technical difficulties. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to show you my screen. So I have my pressure cooker here, and I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. And I know that with it being digital, you can't necessarily see it, but you do need some sort of liquid. And so I'm using water for my pressure cooker. And so you just take the lid off, and inside is an insert. And this comes out, but do not try to cook with it without this insert. So I'm going to set that back in there. And I'm not sure if I'm pinned. I want to make sure that you're able to see me. I'm not able to pin it to myself. There it is. There we go. So you want to make sure that you cook with the insert inside of it. You're going to add some liquid. And this is called kind of that test run when you first take your pressure cooker out of the box. You'll want to do just a test run just to get comfortable with it. You're going to seal and lock your lid in place. And then you're going to press pressure cook. Now, depending on the brand that you have and even the series that you have within the brands, you're going to have different button options. And so sometimes it's going to say pressure cook, sometimes it will say manual, but I can't remember how much time I said I would do, but I'm going to put it on there for just 1 minute so we can see what it really looks like. Another tip that you should always do is to turn this knob into the sealing mode. And once again, depending on the brand that you have and even the series within that brand is going to have different words for it. But you're going to lock that knob into place so that it's sealing and keeping all of the steam within. I'll let it do its business. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Of course, it goes to the other one. All right. So why would you pressure cook? Some people kind of wonder, like, what's all this device about? But with pressure cooking, it saves time, energy, and vitamins. So you're able to decrease cooking time by sometimes up to 50%, and you're able to retain 90 to 95% more vitamins. And you're able to save energy as well. So if you can boil it, steam it, or braise it, you can pressure cook it. Now, if anybody is a bean lover out there, this is the device for you. You're able to cook beans in a significant shorter time period than if you were to just regularly cook it. And you don't have to soak those beans overnight. I'm not kidding. I'm going to share a recipe in the event after this class. It's amazing. The other day, my daughter read a book on lima beans, and so she really wanted me to get lima beans and cook lima beans. So I was kind of like, oh gosh, this is going to take so much time to cook lima beans. And I remembered my pressure cooker and was able to throw it in. It was able to cook in a very short amount of time. But you're also able to do roasts and other starchy foods that are a little bit longer to cook, like potatoes. Pressure cooker, like I said earlier, is able to retain vitamins up to 90 to 95% more over steaming or boiling. And you're also able to save energy. And this is the part that I really love about my pressure cooker, is that it is a lot easier than traditional cooking. What I noticed the first few times that once I kind of got into the groove is that I felt like I was able to put the food into the pressure cooker, and then I was able to clean up, and I almost felt like I was twiddling my thumbs. I was used to having to cook it and stir it and make sure it didn't burn all the food that was within on my stovetop. And then afterwards, I had to clean everything up. Everything is in kind of like one dish for you. So the next question that people usually have is, well, is it safe? And in this particular brand, they have 11 different safety mechanisms for it to be safe. And we're going to be going over some of those safety mechanisms later. The number one message that you get on your pressure cooker, it seems, is like a burn message. And that's telling you that things are too hot and it will start shutting down. And so I was once bragging to my coworker that I've never seen this burn message, and the next day I got it. And it truly started shutting down. It said it got hot, and so it started to decrease in its temperature. And so I knew that this device was safe. Also, you should read your manual. Now, that's probably the number one complaint about any electric pressure cooker, regardless of the brand, is that the manual does not provide you with information that you need. But with the electric pressure cooker, there is a lot of safety, redundant safety systems in place. But pay attention to the hot steam. That is something that I'll show you a tool that you can use to help not to get your fingers possibly burned from that steam that's coming out. You do need to follow the filling recommendations that I'll be going over in just a few moments. And make sure you clean the vent area. And also replace those gaskets when needed. And how you know that your gasket isn't working is when it's just not doing its job and it's not keeping the steam in place. And when you are releasing the steam, don't cover it or obstruct it. And remember that things are really hot. Do you have someone that I hear is off their mic? So I'm going to mute you. All right. So how would you convert your favorite recipes to pressure cooking? There really isn't an easy answer. Does take a little bit of trial and error. But what I recommend is to start with recipes that you know are tested recipes that are through maybe from your friends and family that are easy to start with. And the more that you get comfortable with it, you're going to be able to transfer those recipes that you traditionally make into the pressure cooker. But it's not for all foods. It won't make foods crispy, but you can braise it, boil it, or steam those foods, then you can put it in your pressure cooker. You do need to have at least 1 cup of liquid, and it doesn't have to be water. It can be any sort of liquid. It could be water, it could be broth, beef or vegetable broth. It can even be beer or wine, and it just gives that extra dimension of flavor. And like I said earlier, look for similar recipes. And right now, my pressure cooker is it's it's uh, it's starting to do its business, and you can't see it. Unless you have me toggled, um, you won't be necessarily able to see this. So let me get you out of this. All right. This is when I usually break in my class. What it just told me was that it was got to pressure, and then it was starting to it cooked for 1 minute, and now this is on kind of a timer mode where it will start counting down how long it hasn't been cooking. And this is really helpful that you don't have to keep track of it when you have different types of releases. And we're going to go over that here in a moment. So I'll show that to you. I think I'll show it to you right now, but I'll be able to talk it through on that slide. When you're doing a live class, you're able to adjust your program a little bit, but when it's with a webinar and having to switch all the different devices, it's a little bit different. So there's 4 different types of releases that you would have with your pressure cooker. And if it's a natural release, what you're going to let it do is just naturally release the steam, and it may take up to 15 to 20 minutes for all the steam to dissipate. The next step down is a 10-minute natural release. And what that means is that you would wait for 10 minutes on your pressure cooker, and it would be sitting there for 10 minutes after it's already done. And this will keep on counting for me. And then when that is, you would release the steam. So I have a handy device that someone showed me, and you would release your steam like that. And then there's something called a slow normal, where you would release the steam in short little bursts. Or you would just do a natural, or sorry, a normal or a quick release. And what that means is that you would just turn it so that your steam goes out. And just let the steam dissipate by turning that knob and letting the steam into the venting mode and letting the steam dissipate. Now we'll be talking about some different gadgets that you can use. So I'm going to set that over to the side. So now going back to the slideshow. All right. So something to think about is don't add any thickeners and wait until it's done. And so your recipes may look a little bit different than when you're actually cooking it yourself. Now, one of my friends who really, really loves to cook, she said that she didn't really like her pressure cooker at first because she couldn't taste it, she couldn't smell it, she couldn't stir it, she couldn't sample it through the whole thing, but she really was able to adapt and realize that there were some ways that you could use your pressure cooker. And I did see a message and someone wanted to know about that little vent that I had, and I'll share that in some of my resources here in a bit. So when you're converting your recipe, you want to make sure that you don't fill it more than 2/3 full. And that's for most recipes. If you have soups or frothy foods like beans, you want to make sure that you only fill it halfway full. And within the insert, there is indicators of how full that pot is. Right now it's really hot, so I'm going to let it sit there until a little bit later in the class. And like I shared earlier, add some flavor and some extra dimension by having not just water in your liquids for a recipe, but always check the internal temperature of the food in several places due to inconsistent cooking of the pressure cooker. Now, this is where I usually share my story. When I was trying to use different recipes and really start to feel comfortable with offering a class like this to the community, I decided to get a big sale of chicken at our grocery store. Now, every once in a while at our grocery store, you can get pounds of chicken for $1.50, and I was able to get 8 pounds of chicken in one of those, manager specials packs. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to throw it in my pressure cooker and see what happens. And so I put it in for the temperature, for the amount of time that was recommended. And when I got it out, I decided to get out my thermometer and to check it. And I put it in one place and it was 170 degrees. I put it into another place and it immediately dropped down to 148 degrees. Pulled it out and checked in another area, 170 degrees. Pulled it out and put it in another area, 140. So that told me a couple of things. It told me that there's inconsistent cooking within the pressure cooker, and it really did drive home the information that it is not safe to can in your pressure cooker. You're not going to know which jars are safe and which ones aren't. So it's just best to use food that you're able to check the temperature and cook food for meals. So this is what I was hoping to time it a little bit better of releasing the pressure. So there's the normal quick release. Sometimes you'll see recipes refer to it as quick release or fast release, and that means that you're just releasing the pressure all at once using the valve. There's the slow normal, and while I put it into this class, I haven't come across a recipe that uses it. It was in several resources, and I thought I should share it with you. That the slow normal is just those bursts of 10 seconds of steam spraying out of the valve. Now, the 10-minute natural release is when usually you would use this on soups, or I've seen it on roast, where you just let it sit there for 10 minutes before turning it to that quick release where the steam just goes out. And what that does is it just helps to release the amount of pressure so it doesn't uh, just kind of put everything, all the pressure to have the food go to the top of your lid. When I shared that with somebody, she was like, oh, that makes sense, because she was usually having to clean the lid afterwards. And a natural release is it just lets the pressure naturally dissipate. So since we live in Montana and we have altitude and we live in the mountains, you do have to adjust your time just like you would for pressure canning. So if you live above 3,000 feet, you're going to increase your recipe by 5%. Now, it doesn't really matter that much if you have only a 10-minute recipe, but if you have a longer, it may take a little bit more time. And so you're going to definitely want to add on some more time for your roasts and longer soups and stews. But if you live at a higher altitude, like one time I taught a class with a lady and she was visiting from Denver, and she was in the 6,000 to 7,000 foot range. And this was an aha moment for her. If you're living in that 5, 6, 7 elevation, then you're going to need to increase your recipes by 15, 20 to 25% time. And that's a considerable amount of time at the 10-minute mark, and especially hour-long mark. So let's say you get a pressure or there's a burn message, and you just can't seem to get the pressure to get up, or you get a burn message, or your pan says hot. It depends on what your brand says of what message it will give you, but basically, it's not going to do its job. And the reason why it's not doing its job is for a variety of reasons, and here's a few. Food may be stuck at the bottom of your insert, and the insert is that pan that's in the bottom of your pressure cooker. Your sauce may be too thick, so you may need to add additional water or add those thickeners after cooking. Or you added some dairy products, and so usually do that afterwards. And you can use a pot and pot method, which we'll be going over in a little bit. Your screen or vent may be plugged up, and I'll show you that part on the pressure cooker here in a moment. And the plate or gasket may not be inserted correctly, and I'll show you that as well. Or you may not have enough liquid in it, or you're forgetting to turn the knob into the sealing position, which I've done multiple times. So here are a few things that you may want to have for accessories. And I'm going to once again take you off of sharing mode. And show you on. Seems like my head is chopped off. Maybe if I was one of those professional videos, you'd be able to see everything. So there's a couple of parts and pieces that I really like for a pressure cooker. Really hot, so I'm going to try to get that steam kind of cleared out. So a couple of accessories that you may want to have for your pressure cooker is to have get a rack that has wings. Sometimes I have heard that to try to reduce the price on the pressure cooker, they gave a rack without the wings, and that is definitely a way that you could save some money. But it does make it a little bit easier that you can put a pot and pot method or a cheesecake. You can put the pot in here and then put it into your pressure cooker. You can make a sling out of aluminum foil that would sit underneath that pan and be able to put into your pressure cooker. This springform pan, and it looks like my husband's home for lunch. I forgot about that as when I was teaching my class. But the springform pan is a way that you can make cheesecake. I usually offer that as a part of my class. And so if you're in the area, you can take a class. Probably the next time I'll be offering a class face-to-face will be in the fall. But this is a springform pan that I got online. This is a wire basket that I use for vegetable steaming, but I also use it for when I make hard-boiled eggs. And it has a silicone handle that I really like that I can just be able to place in there, and then I'll also pull it out and put it into the sink when I'm trying to cool down my boiled eggs. This was something that I didn't have to purchase. It was already a part of my pots and pans, but it was a lid that I was able to use for when I use the slow cooker method, and I'm able to just set it right on my pot. Another little handy trick is a steam diverter. And this is just an elbow, a PVC pipe elbow that my husband picked up at the hardware store. And I picked it up from this tip from a class just a couple weeks ago, right before we went into quarantine. A gal said that she wasn't willing to pay $8 for a steam diverter that you can definitely get online. And she was able to pick it up for under $2 at the hardware store. And what it was able to just divert that steam so it didn't come underneath. Now in this video, I know that I put the steam underneath. It just was how the video and how my computer was set up. But usually you have to just be aware of where that steam is, because if I kept doing that, my cabinet may become warped. So this is a way that you can divert that steam away from coming directly up and out of the way. On that knob on your pressure cooker, there's a little bit of water that's in there. The steam would usually just come up out of this knob. And what that did was that it sat on top and it just moved. And the size that it is, and I'll put it into the comments later, is 1 1/4 inch for the PVC pipe knob. Now this is the knob that I was talking about, where this is something that you can make sure that you clean and it doesn't get clogged. I didn't realize this came off until my chicken episode. I had chicken and meat, or it wasn't meat, but it was the juices that were coming out of this, and it was needed to be cleaned. And I didn't realize that this could be cleaned, and I also didn't know this inside could be popped off and cleaned as well. I don't know if I can do it upside down, but this pops off. This right here is a gasket, and you can get different colors of gaskets or multiple replacement parts. Probably the number one complaint with gaskets is the smell that people, that the food, the flavors or the smells of the food that you make kind of get stuck inside the gasket. So I've read online that you can put it in vinegar or you can run it through your dishwasher, but I just can't seem to get some of those really pungent smells out of my gasket. So some people, they like to have different gaskets, maybe one for sweets, one for salties and savories, one's for desserts, one for curry, or other spices that are a little bit more strong. And you can pick that up online where you would purchase your device, or even on Amazon or other websites. Another device that I like, or accessory, is this is my microwave and dishwasher safe and oven safe Corningware. And this was just out of my cabinet, and I was able to use this for the pot and pot method. Like I said with the burn message, sometimes it would just come. One time I made, or I was trying to make a frittata. And so I just cracked the eggs in the bottom of it, and I really didn't think about the need for steam to be created in there. And so once I put the food into my corning ware, I was able to put the food in there and then put it into the pressure cooker. And that helped reduce that burn message. I was also, you do still have to put the liquids in the bottom, and then you put the food in the pot and pot method. All right. It seems like my house has suddenly not been quiet anymore. Okay, let me go back to the PowerPoint. So a few recipes that I'd like to share with you is uh, these are some books that you can pick up at your local library. I know our library is part of the Montana Interlibrary Loan, and you can get them from your, you can get them rented in from your library once it's closed right now, but you can get yours once things start to open back up. So there's Hip Pressure Cooking, and this is fast, fresh, and flavorful. Great Food Fast by Bob Warden. He has a couple of books. He's the QVC cook, and he has a couple of pressure cooker books. His in particular are kind of more of meats and potatoes. And then there's one by the America's Test Kitchen and Electric Pressure Cooker Cookbook, 200 fast and fuel-proof recipes for every brand of electric pressure cooker. And all of these books and resources will be placed in the event page after this class. I have it scheduled to post at 1 o'clock. There's also some recipes online that I also have shared on there as well. So if you're wanting to buy your electric pressure cooker, we'll go over some of the things that you should think about. So if you still need to buy one, with the electric, it's convenient. There's things that are pre-programmed. And so think about the things that you want to have. Some allow you to make yogurt in your pressure cooker, and some models do not. So if that's a feature that you want, make sure you look for that in particular. Do you want a nonstick or do you want a stainless steel pan? Do you want a removable top? Mine was able to be removed, and some of them you have to, there's a latch and it opens. Do you want a float valve that's electronic, or do you want one that's noiseless? And then I would encourage you to get one that has at least 2 pressure settings. Next is the size of your pressure cooker. Do you want a 4-quart one? Do you want a 6-quart one, or do you want an 8-quart one? A 4-quart is for singles or couples, or like a 1-course meal. A 6-quart is the most popular size for families, but you can get ones that are 8 or even 10-quart sizes. And this is for larger families or ones if you have large quantities of food. It's good to estimate 1 quart per person in your household. But also keep in mind that most recipes are built for 6 to 8 quart size. And I know that someone had one of the little mini ones that was a 4-quart, and she realized after this class that, oh, that's why when I made my first recipe, the food was just coming out the top of it. So really think about if you want to do the math and get a smaller size, but those who are single or just have a couple of people at home, or maybe those who live in an RV, they do like that smaller size. It's just a little bit easier to tuck away. Most brands, the range of the price ranges from $60 to $160. The price has come down quite a bit over the last few years, but Hip Pressure Cooking has a pressure cooker buying guide as well. So what about the brand? Now, like I said earlier, Extension doesn't promote any brands, and so there are a lot of varieties and brands of pressure cookers on the market. For my classes, I use the same model and brand so that I can quickly go between the hands-on participants, and I don't have to kind of train my mind to remember which model does which difference. But the number one thing I would recommend is to look for companies that have been in business for a number of years and see if they have replacement parts, and check out their customer service. Maybe email them before if customer service is something that is really important to you. Reach out to them and see what type of response you get when you contact the company. Finally, before I take it off and answer some questions, is to store your pressure cooker. Before you store it, always wash the pot, lid, and rubber gasket by hand with soapy warm water, and then dry it. You can use vinegar to help clean up those fragrant sealing rings, but also don't lock your lid in place because oftentimes there's still a little bit of moisture and it just creates a really great environment for mold to grow. So have that lid flipped inside out and placed on top of your pressure cooker. And so I'm going to encourage you to place your favorite recipes in the face. And if you add a photo of yourself with that favorite recipe, you get some extra gold stars. So I'm going to take us out of the PowerPoint view and we can start answering some questions. And I'll look at the chat box. And so, good. If you have any questions, go ahead and you can answer them now or take yourself on mute, off of mute. It looks like Katrin asked about the PVC pipe, and I will say that when I got it yesterday, I tried it out, and when I set it on top of it, like I put it on top of it when I first started sealing the pressure cooker, and it was almost too heavy. It was letting out steam. So I would recommend putting it on like I did and letting the steam divert when you're ready rather than letting it hang out on top of it. At least with this, there was just maybe a little bit too much weight. I haven't played around with it enough, but I thought that it was cheap enough tip to pass along to you that you can save a little bit of extra money. It also looks like some people have some questions about the air frying lid, and I have not used it, but someone brought it to my attention that you can get one from Instant Pot does have one for its attachment. There's also Melty. It's healthy, but with an M, M as in mouse, is that you can attach to the top of your pressure cooker. And there's also another brand called Ninja that has the pressure cooker as well as the air fryer already a part of it. So a question that came in from Fran is how much room is there around your spring form pan? I'm not sure if you're meaning inside the inserts or the size itself. I don't remember. I bought it a couple of years ago, and I believe it was 11 inches. That was the size of the air or the springform pan. I can look it up and put it in that information on the Facebook event for the pressure cooker. Another question from Office is, how do you know when to use the automatic cooking settings? I only have used the manual settings. That is something a little bit trickier, definitely. What I've noticed is that the settings put it on either the high pressure, low pressure, on the less, normal, or more. So for example, the stew button puts it on the high pressure. And there's certain settings that you can't get to on the manual button. I personally just use the manual button. And there's the two books that I like the best are Hip Pressure Cooking, and that's the one that also has a website. And it was by Laura. Oh, I'm going to totally butcher her last name. It looks like this, and I'll put it on the Facebook event. And she talks about the different pressure settings. She also has it on her website a little bit more about those different settings. I primarily use the manual, and you can play around with the different settings of how it helps you gauge whether or not it needs to be high or low pressure. And can I put meat that is frozen and cook without thawing? The answer is yes, you can, but it does take about 50% more time than what is the recipe calls for. But I will say that I want to encourage you to try to thaw your foods before using it, simply because it does save you a little bit more time. But think about an ice cube. So if you have a giant block of food that you are cooking in your pressure cooker, the outside is going to get cooked a lot more than the inside of that food, because it's going to take longer for the food to thaw over that time. So I try to use food that has been thawed out already. But yes, you can take it from a frozen state, but it does take a lot longer. So it's going to have a little bit higher learning curve for you. So if you're used to doing something that you, like for example, if you use frozen chicken and you usually use thawed chicken, you're going to have a learning curve and have to process it for about 50% more time. Any other questions? Fran, did I answer your question about the springform pan? Okay, yes. Okay, good job. Great. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, what pasta and sauce? Can you cook? What's your favorite recipe? So the pasta and sauce is, you can cook. There's one of my recipes that I use in the class is called messy lasagna, and I will share that in our Facebook page. It has the noodles that are a part of it, and it's it's like lasagna, but it's in a pot form meal, and I'll share that with you in the Facebook event. My favorite recipe, I would say, is hard-boiled eggs. If you have farm fresh eggs, you can put them in your pressure cooker, and they peel like amazing. Usually with farm fresh eggs, the egg sticks to the shell and it's really hard to come off. But with the pressure cooker, because it steams it, it's able to come off, almost the shell come off in chunks. And I'm a huge fan of hard-boiled eggs, and so this is definitely a game changer for me. Um, and how big is the Corningware pan? I will also place that in this one says it is 1.5 quarts, 1.4 liters. And I will also place that in the Facebook event with some information and a picture of it. So this was, like I said, we don't endorse anything, but this was from my, already from my kitchen. You probably have the same one in your home, maybe a different brand. Just make sure that it is microwave and oven safe before you use it. Any other questions? All right. So I am going to open a poll for you and share that with you. It just gives us some feedback on the program, and you have about 5 minutes to complete that, and it gives us some feedback on it. While you're completing that, I'm going to share with you some of the other programs that we have. This upcoming Monday, we have Cooking with Kids, and that's going to be taught by my coworker, Jasmine Carbajal. She's the extension agent up in Hill County. On Tuesday, we have Stop Stressing About Weight Gain During Quarantine. Get your questions answered from a registered dietitian with Dr. Suzanne Sluka. She's the Associate Director of MSU Extension. On Wednesday is What's in Your Pantry by Carrie Krug. She's an extension agent in Richland County. On Thursday, we have Dr. Marcia Getting, and she's teaching us legal ways to avoid probate on your estate. And then next Friday, we have Supporting Youth Mental Health During COVID-19, taught by Alice Burchek and Kelly Katani. And both of them are extension agents in Toole County and Silver Bow County. The following Monday, we have Montana Medical Care Savings Account with Dr. Marcia Getting. And then on Tuesday, April 28th, we have When Hearts Are Stretched, Honoring Grief and Fostering Compassion, Resilience Amongst a Global Pandemic. And then on Wednesday, April 29th, we have Arthritis Exercise with Tara Andrews, and she's the extension agent in Custer County. So we even are talking about programming that we have coming up in May, and we've decided to go to a structure in May of having programs on Tuesdays and Thursdays throughout the month of May over the noon hour. We have some great topics that we just decided, such as artesian breads and making pastas and making your own salad dressings and salads, as well as a couple of classes on supporting the system. So I'm glad that you're here, and come back and see some of our other programming. Have a great day.